carbon induced and chlorine induced corrosion, and we saw the mechanisms of both these corrosions.
Fine. So, what are the difference between these two type of corrosions in terms of its mechanism?
I mean, carbon induced corrosion, the corrosion will be uniform, whereas in chlorine, it will be kind of localized corrosion.
All right. Fine. So, what is chloride threshold value? So, when we have carbon-induced corrosion or when we have chloride-induced corrosion, which one is the critical parameter to look at?
Ma'am, is the screen shared?
I have it shared. Yeah. So when we have chloride-induced corrosions, we have more localized corrosion type. So we kind of see pit formations on the rebar. So the cross-sectional loss or the diameter loss is going to be severe at one particular location. So you will be having a localized corrosion there when you have chloride attack, corrosion due to chloride. Whereas when you have carbonation induced corrosions, you kind of have almost uniform reduction in your cross-sectional area. So you have uniform corrosion. So what is the significant parameters that get affected by the corrosion? So when you have so I was showing the service life of the structure graph, right? So you have initiation phase and then you have propagation phase, and once the allowable damage, so once the damage limit is exceeding the allowable damage in a particular structure, then the structure will be deforming significantly, right? So in that case, I was explaining about certain parameters which plays a huge role in governing the performance of your structure in terms of like how it can allow the chlorides or carbon dioxide inside the matrix, inside your concrete. So what are those parameters?
Diffusibility of the CO2 or chlorine.
Yeah, diffusion, like permeability or the coefficient of diffusion, how well or how fast or how slow your carbon dioxide or chloride can get into the concrete to reach the steel concrete interface, right? Then, so for carbon induced corrosion, what would be the critical parameter to look at? And for chloride induced corrosion, what would be the critical parameter to look at? So there is one parameter for in each cases. So beyond that value, your corrosion is going to be significant. So there is some permissible or allowable limit for each type of corrosion. So you can, for example, if there are a small amount of corrosion that is not going to harm your structure, similarly like small amount of chloride in your system, so we have certain allowable or permissible limits in the concrete. So what those values are for these type of corrosions that we are talking about?
pH threshold.
pH threshold is for
Carbonation induced corrosion.
yeah, true, correct. Then
Ma'am, in
Chlor-
carbonation depth for carbon-induced corrosion. From that we can figure out the permissible limit.
yeah, so first thing, as Tushali pointed out, it is pH threshold value. So once the pH reduces significantly, so once it becomes acidic from the alkaline environment, then only you will start observing significant corrosion or the carbonation. So once that has occurred, then we determine the carbonation depth. So that is in the second stage. So after the initiation phase, you'll be having a propagation phase, so in which the corrosion is going to be significant. So to know how significant it is, you need to measure the carbonation depth. So how do you obtain the carbonation depth?
Phenolphthalein indicator.
Yeah, right. Phenolphthalein indicator. What does it do?
So like that turns into colorless wherever there is an attack. So it will be colorless, and wherever it's like not attacked, it will be like in the pink color.
So the pink color indicates good quality concrete, and wherever you
Yes.
observe change in color, that indicates that your concrete is carbonated. Very good. Then, how about chloride-induced corrosion? Yeah. So what is the critical parameter for chloride-induced corrosion?
Chloride threshold value.
Yeah, chloride threshold value. Fine. So I think we have stopped at that point, like when we started about this chloride threshold things. So did we stop here in the last class? So we looked at the so is this covered in the last class? Right. So we were here in the last class, we discussed about like how chloride threshold values can be changed for providing better corrosion resistance, right? So here you can see the chloride threshold values for various types of steel rebars that we can use in OPC system, right? So these are indicating your different types of steel rebars that we have. So the A706, A615, this basically indicates the type of rebar, different types of rebar based on its strength, right? So when we have such different types and based on its composition, so your critical chloride threshold value can change. So here the chloride threshold value is very low, and as so this SS basically indicates the stainless steel. So when you change the conventional steel to the stainless steel, so the amount of chloride required for initiating the corrosion is increasing. So you're basically increasing your chloride threshold value. So for example, in the same environment, if you have two different types of steel rebars, so if one is the conventional rebar, normal composition, and whereas another one is stainless steel rebar. So in such cases, for a same amount of corrosion to occur, both needs different chloride threshold value. So for conventional rebar, you need even if small amount of chloride is there in the concrete, that can initiate the corrosion. Whereas for stainless steel rebar, the corrosion amount has to be significant. So the chloride amount has to be significant. So compared to the conventional rebar to initiate the corrosion. So you can see the values. It is almost 5 to 10 times for stainless steel rebars compared to your conventional steel rebars. Again, this is not only the property of steel, but it is also the properties of your cementitious material that you use for preparing concrete. So this chloride threshold value can change. This chloride threshold value can change when you use the cement matrix or when you use different types of cementitious materials for preparing your concrete. So the cementitious material cover that plays a role in governing your chloride threshold value. Right. So here you can see the chloride threshold value, so that how it can be increased when you use corrosion inhibiting admixtures. So you know what is corrosion inhibiting admixtures? Basically, we add certain type of admixtures to protect the steel from the corrosion, so that corrosion can be reduced. So this basically provides a protection layer on your steel rebar, and then it enhances the corrosion resistance of your system. So the bipolar inhibitor can prevent both anodic and cathodic reaction from happening. So in that case, where matrix where you have, if you add admixtures, especially the chloride inhibiting admixtures, that is going to prevent both anodic and cathodic reaction. So which is your Fe, anodic reaction is Fe, that gets into Fe2 plus 2 electrons, and then the cathodic reaction where oxidation takes place to form hydroxide ions. So now here you can see the effect of water cement ratio on the performance of bipolar inhibitor, right? So here you are adding bipolar inhibitor in different percentages for two different concrete system. So the system one basically have the system one basically has water cement ratio of about 0.4, and then the system 2 has the water cement ratio of 0.6. One is the normal strength concrete, another one is when you have 0.6 water cement ratio, the strength can be lower. So it's comparing to this, the strength of this would be lesser. So for those two different systems, what would be the chloride threshold value, and how the chloride threshold value can be improved with by adding bipolar inhibitors. Fine. So this 0% basically indicates that your control concrete without any admixtures, and then you add admixtures of 0.5% by weight of the cement, and then you can add admixtures of about 1% by weight of cement. So when you add such admixtures in this different levels, so you are going to enhance the performance, you are going to improve the resistance to corrosion. So the chloride threshold value is improving. So you can allow, now your system can take more chlorides, but the steel will not be corroded, because this bipolar inhibitors provides protection for your rebars. Whereas when you have higher water cement ratio, so if you add bipolar inhibitors, that will not have an effect, because when you have water cement ratio higher, the porosity is going to be high, and that kind of inhibits the effect of admixtures itself. So even if you add admixtures, you will not get the enough benefit out of it. So the chloride threshold value will not be improved significantly for high water cement ratio system. And here you can see the effect of inhibitors. So when you add inhibitors, how well your service life can be enhanced, right? So here you have, you can see three curves. So one is for no inhibitor cases. The red one is for CNR inhibitor. And then the third one is bipolar inhibitor. So CNR basically has either that can reduce anodic reaction or cathodic reaction. It will not do both reduction. But bipolar inhibitor that has a tendency to reduce both anodic and cathodic reaction. Right? Once again, I don't know why my pen is not working here.
मेरो अनलक छ कि छैन थाहा छैन राख त अरे जम्मा एउटा बाँकी छ जम्मा एउटा बाँकी छ यो जित्नु पर्छ त्यस्तो भनेर गयो भने हार्छ नि ल ल
Samir, what are you doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Ma'am, my mother called me, so I went over there. Sorry, ma'am. Sorry.
So when you use bipolar inhibitors, the resistance for corrosion is going to be significant. So the chloride threshold value will be improved significantly compared to the other type of inhibitor called CNR. So when you have no inhibitor, if you have the service life of the structure is about, so this basically indicates the corrosion initiation period using Life 365 software. So in such cases, without inhibitor for a controlled mix, you will be having about 9.2 years, and this is for the case where you have water binder ratio of about 0.45, and then the cover depth of your concrete is concrete to rebar is about 50 mm, and then the chloride diffusibility value for this particular concrete system is given here. So for this given conditions, for controlled system, you can expect the service life of the structure to be about 9.2 years. So when you add admixtures in it, so you basically enhancing the corrosion resistivity by improving the increasing the chloride threshold values. So the service life is getting increased. So from 9.2 to 18.4 when you use CN type inhibitors, and when you use bipolar inhibitors, the service life is significantly increased for about 32 years. So the appropriate use of corrosion inhibitors plays a major role in increasing the median of corrosion initiation time by about 2 to 3 times. So the center line basically indicates the median to median point, so which indicates the corrosion initiation. So in x-axis you can see the corrosion initiation period plotted using the Life 365 software. So this is another example which indicates how compressive strength of the concrete plays a major role and how the dosage of inhibitor is going to affect the compressive strength of concrete, that is indicated here. Because when we say that you can add admixtures in concrete, but you should also give, what is the purpose of adding admixtures? That is to prevent corrosion to occur. So it is not like you can add any amount of admixtures in system so that you can prevent the corrosion completely, so your system is going to be durable. So there are certain challenges involved in it when you add such admixtures, that is going to affect your workability, and mainly that is going to affect your strength. So you need to do the trial and error experiments so that you can find out optimum amount of corrosion inhibitors required for concrete preparation, right? So here is one example which shows to use amine plus nitrate based inhibitors, and when you use such type of inhibitors, how the compressive strength at 28 day is affected. So here the first one basically indicates that you have your concrete without any corrosion inhibitors. So in such cases you have the strength close to 40 MPa. But when you increase the corrosion inhibitors dosage level, you can see the reduction in the compressive strength of concrete at 28 days. So here the RD basically represents required dosage of your inhibitor. So the required dosage should be something like you have almost similar strength of your corrosion inhibitor, right? So in the other thing, if you are increasing the dosage or if you are decreasing the dosage, that is going to have an effect on your compressive strength. Your compressive strength is going to get reduced, right? So appropriate dosage is very important to avoid adverse effects on compressive strength. So if that is affected, then your permeability of concrete structure will also be changed. So to meet the durability and strength requirements, you need to choose appropriate dosage of corrosion inhibitor to be added in the concrete system. And the second thing is the effect of dosage on inhibitor on water sorptivity must be checked. So this one is another durability indexes factor, so which indicates how much water your concrete can absorb. So this was indicated by water sorptivity index. So we have certain test methods for obtaining water sorptivity. So this I will explain in detail about how can you perform test to indicate the water sorptivity index in the condition assessment test, where we can take samples from the real structure and do testing in the laboratory, right? So the corrosion has the administered dosage, the recommended dosage or the type of inhibitors that you add, that has an influence on compressive strength, as well as that has an influence on durability in terms of permeability. So when you have more permeable structure, your water sorptivity index is going to be higher. So here you can see three types of inhibitors were used. So the inhibitor A, B, C. When you have inhibitor A, the water sorptivity index is too high. So you can see the dosage level. So when you have control and when you have a recommended dosage, the water sorptivity index is increasing. Similarly, when you have the second type of admixtures called corrosion inhibitor called inhibitor B. So again, the water sorptivity index is increasing from its control value to, so from its control system to the concrete which has recommended dosage of inhibitor B. And when you have inhibitor C, and this gives almost the similar value of your control system. So the water sorptivity index using the inhibitor C is almost similar, and that is comparable to your controlled system. But here you have the code has specified the different limits for having a durable structure. So for getting a durable concrete, you should have water sorptivity index is to be less. So you can see the range of water sorptivity just to understand the quality of concrete that you are going to use. So the concrete quality has to be excellent or good for meeting the durability requirement. So for that you need to have either the water sorptivity index has to be less than 10 or less than 5 to have a good excellent concrete system. So you can do this testing and you can obtain the water sorptivity value, and you can see whether that is lying in the range that you are expecting. If not, you have to discard those concrete material and you have to design the concrete in such a way that you can obtain a good quality or excellent quality that you are looking for. Right. So the dosage of inhibitor has a definite influence on the durability indices, and it should be chosen carefully. So here you can see the concrete cracks that you can expect in concrete structures. So you can expect, what are the different types of cracks that you can expect in the concrete structures? So what would be the causes for the cracking? So that can be due to the structural cracks, or that can be due to environmental durability cracks due to exposed due to different environmental conditions. So typically when you consider a simply supported structure, in the middle where you have a applied load, so you can expect flexural cracks, right? So such vertical cracks that you see here, so this basically indicates your flexural cracks, and near the support you will be having 45 degree inclined shear cracks, right? So in between these spaces, that is in between the middle and support region. So there you will have initiate the crack initiating by flexure, and then it is getting propagated by shear. So you will have the combination of flexure and shear cracks. So you can see, so perpendicular cracks, and then it gets growth in this direction. So this is the case for simply supported structures. If you have continuous support, then you will be having a scenario. You have the negative bending moment at the top of this region, and then the positive hogging and sagging moments will be there at the middle, bottom, and then at the support here at the middle supports, or the intermediate supports there at the top. Right. So similarly, you will be observing the flexural and flexural shear cracks at the top of this region when you have continuous support. And there are other types of cracks that you can observe in building. Those cracks are due to poor mix or curing practices. So here you can see such a type of crack. This is shrinkage cracks in roof structure. So when these type of cracks that you can observe in any new constructions that is going on, or because when you have a concrete placing, so typically in practice we tend to use more amount of cement and then improper curing. So when you have such scenario, so if you have more amount of paste content, so that has a tendency to cause plastic shrinkage. So you will start forming. So when there is a small evaporation, and when there is a moisture loss due to evaporation, that is going to that is going to cause shrinkage cracks in roofs. So this could be due to the poor mix that you have adapted for concreting, and then the poor curing practices. So most cases we need to provide continuous curing for new structures until it has earned enough strength. If you do not provide continuous curing, then that is going to cause water loss, and then that moisture loss is going to lead shrinkage cracks. And then you may observe some type of structural cracks. So why such structural cracks form? So when it's very normal that we provide temporary support to the structure so that we can do concreting, and then once the concrete has hardened, we remove this temporary support. So basically this temporary support is placed to take the load until your concrete has hardened. Now that your concrete is hardened, you can take this temporary support because your concrete is matured enough to take the load it is expected to take, right? But in case if the concrete is not hardened enough, if it is not matured, then if the temporary support is removed earlier itself before it is attaining its required strength, then your concrete is not ready to take the expected load and it tend to crack. So the such early removal of formworks will lead to structural cracks in beams. So this is an example for this case. You can see such structural cracks in the beam due to the early removal of this temporary support. And then here is an example of shrinkage cracks, which is due to the usage of poor mix design and curing practices. And this is another example, like very common example that you can see such shear and flexural cracks that we are talking about is in bridge girders, especially at the ends. You can see a lot of cracks. So next time when you pass or cross by in any of the bridges, you just observe whether you can spot any cracks on the structure, and if so, depending on the location, just see whether you can identify the cause for such cracks. And if you spot any such deformation or cracks, please take a photo and share it to me so we can have a discussion in the class whenever it is possible. Fine. So here there is a crack which indicates the flexural cracking and nearly support. So this is basically the closer version of this image, this portion, and which indicates a lot of flexural cracks and then the shear cracks. And this is one of the bridges located in prime city of India, where major. It's one of the major highway bridge in India, and which has a lot of shear cracks almost all along its